Goodbye, everybody. Schmakes for blotching. Wait a minute. No, that's wrong. I mean, hello, everyone. Welcome to Storytime with Mrs. Michelle. No, that's wrong too. I mean, hi, everybody. Welcome to Storytime with Mr. Michael. Boy, that was a pretty big mistake, wasn't it? A couple of mistakes. I guess it just goes to show everybody makes mistakes all the time. So what's a mistake? Well, it's when you mean to do something one way or you mean to be helpful and you accidentally do things the wrong way or you're not so helpful. And that happens to all of us from time to time. In fact, we're going to read a book about it today. Go figure. Today, we're going to be reading Henry's Awful Mistake by Robert Quackenbush. So, I'm really excited to find out what's in this book. I feel like I'm going to be able to connect quite a bit with Henry here because I've been known to make mistakes. That's a fact. You guys have all just been witness to that. Why don't we go ahead and discover, shall we, what's in Henry's Awful Mistake? Henry's Awful Mistake by Robert Quackenbush. Henry the Duck invited his friend Clara over for supper. All day he chopped, stewed, and stirred to make a fine meal. Just as he was about done, he saw an ant in the kitchen. Henry was worried that Clara would see the ant. She might think his house was not clean. The ant had to go. Henry reached for a can of ant spray. But he didn't want to spray near the food he was cooking, so he chased the ant with a frying pan. Henry ran around the kitchen chasing after the ant, but the ant got away and hid behind the stove. Henry took the food he was cooking off the stove. Then he shut off the flame and pulled the stove away from the wall. He saw the ant. The ant saw Henry and ran into a small crack in the wall. Henry went and got a hammer. Henry pounded a big hole in the wall where the crack was, but he couldn't find the ant, so he kept on pounding. The hole got bigger and bigger. At last, Henry saw the ant sitting on a pipe inside the wall. Henry aimed the hammer at the ant and missed. The blow of the hammer broke the pipe. Water came shooting out of the pipe. Henry couldn't stop it. Henry grabbed a towel, he tied it around the pipe, and the water stopped shooting out. Whew. But Henry hadn't stopped the water soon enough. It had sprayed all over the kitchen. Everything was soaking wet, except for Clara's supper. Thank goodness. Henry began mopping up the puddles of water. All at once, he slipped and banged his head against the kitchen table. Everything came crashing down. Henry was covered with pots and pans and food. The supper was ruined. There was nothing Henry could do now but call Clara and tell her not to come. While Henry was talking on the telephone, the towel came loose from the pipe. The water came shooting out and flooded the whole house. Henry was carried right out the front door by the flood. There was no going back. Poor Henry, his house was washed away by the flood. He saved what he could and moved into a new house. When Henry was settled in his new house, he again asked Clara over for supper. Just as he went to the door to let Clara in, he saw the ant. Henry looked the other way. The end. Wow. So Henry's mistake was pretty big, wasn't it? I'd say it was pretty awful. Goodness sakes, that's a lot more awful than the mistake I made at the beginning of this video, wasn't it? Just saying goodbye instead of hello and saying Mrs. Michelle instead of Mr. Michael. Those were awful, awful mistakes. And Henry just had to deal with them. That's what happens when you make a mistake. You can't pretend you didn't make a mistake. You have to own up to the fact that you made a mistake. You say, yep, that was me. I made a mistake. I'm sorry, and I'm going to try better next time. Henry seemed to have learned his lesson too, didn't he? I think that he realized that that ant wasn't such a big deal compared to what could happen if he tried to address the ant problem. Wow. Okay, everybody, I hope we've all learned a very important lesson from Henry's mistake. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to learn lessons from our own mistakes, as well as watching other people's. Thank you so much for joining me today for Story Time with Mr. Michael. Whew, got it right. Have you made big mistakes? You can tell me in the comments below. Again, you saw me make a mistake today, but I make mistakes all the time. Sometimes I make mistakes when I do these videos, and you see them because I've usually never read these books before, and I just read them out loud and I put it up no matter what happens. Is there something you'd like to hear me read? Maybe I'll read it perfectly. Maybe I'll make mistakes. I won't care because I love doing story time with Mr. Michael for you guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Please keep reading, stay blurious, and I'll see you curious. And I'll see you next time on Storytime with Mr. Michael. Bye everybody.